When Rex Ryan accused Shedeur Sanders of lacking discipline, Cam Newton didn't just call out, he confronted the whole premise. Where's the proof? Where's the data backing up claims about effort, attitude, or leadership? Ryan had none. What he did have was a familiar formula. Vague critiques built on perception rather than performance. Newton flipped the script, daring the public to demand accountability. Not from young players like Sanders, but from the voices who shape how they're seen.
If you're into the real story and all the messy twists they don't show on highlight reels, go ahead and subscribe. And if you're sticking around to see how this Browns QB chaos plays out, you should definitely be subscribed.
This wasn't just Newton defending another quarterback. It was a direct challenge to how the game is covered and how narratives are spun. The backlash to Ryan's words showed just how quickly opinions can become obstacles, especially when they're filtered through bias. Newton's response put facts back in the driver's seat, reminding everyone that success in the NFL isn't just about talent, but about having the mental strength to rise above unfair criticism. Cam Newton wasn't just defending a quarterback. He was defending a legacy, a lineage, a generation of players who've had to prove themselves twice as hard, just to be taken half as seriously. It all blew up when Rex Ryan made what we would call a casual comment. Others would call it a dog whistle. He stood on national television and accused Shedeur Sanders of having poor body language, a questionable work ethic, and an overall lack of dedication. There wasn't a stat to back it. There was no film breakdown, no coaching intel, no real evidence. Just vibes. And not the good kind. The NFL has seen this script before. But this time, Cam Newton flipped it. Cam wasn't calm. He wasn't diplomatic. He was fed up. And when the camera cut back to him, he lit into Rex Ryan with the kind of intensity that doesn't come from just one comment. It comes from a lifetime of watching people like Rex rewrite the rules depending on who's playing the game. As Newton made it clear, Shedeur Sanders wasn't being criticized for his ability. He was being criticized for existing confidently. And in the NFL, that can be enough to stall a career before it even starts. This wasn't about a missed throw or a fumbled snap. It was about demeanor. And that's where the danger lies. Because when we start judging quarterbacks on whether they look like a leader or if they act humble enough, what we're really doing is making space for coded criticism. And that criticism always seems to hit the same group of players. Shedeur Sanders came into the league with pressure most rookies don't face. Not only is he a high-profile young quarterback with legitimate talent, he's also Deion Sanders' son. That alone put a target on his back. But instead of faltering, Shedeur handled it with composure. He stayed focused. He did the work. And he did it all while carrying himself with the same swagger his father was known for. But apparently, that swagger is still too much for some people. The issue here isn't just what Rex Ryan said. It's what it implies. Because the second you start throwing around words like lazy or not committed without anything to back it up, you're not analyzing. You're signaling. And those signals get picked up by front offices, by fans, by media outlets, and they spread like wildfire. Cam Newton has lived through that. He's been called every name in the book. Too flashy. Too emotional. Not a student of the game. He was drafted as a number 1 pick and still had to fight to be respected like his peers. Even during his MVP season, the media focused more on how he celebrated touchdowns and how he led a franchise to the Super Bowl. So when Rex Ryan tried to pull the same play on Shedeur Sanders, Cam stepped in to stop it at the source. He didn't hold back. He called out the bias. He said what so many black athletes have been too exhausted to say over and over. This isn't about performance. It's about perception. The kind that gets shaped by people like Rex, who have the platform and the privilege to mold public opinion with a single sentence. And make no mistake, this wasn't some calm debate over stats. This got heated. Witnesses say it almost turned physical. That tells you how high the stakes are. Cam didn't blow up because he was being sensitive. He blew up because he's been in Shedeur's shoes, and he knows how quickly an unfair narrative can derail a promising career. What's even more frustrating is that none of Rex Ryan's criticisms were grounded in reality. Shedeur Sanders has been praised by coaches and teammates for his discipline and preparation. He's not just talented, he's mentally tough. He reads defenses well. He doesn't get rattled under pressure, and he carries himself like a professional. But for some reason, that gets flipped into a negative. It's the same tired double standard. When white quarterbacks show confidence, it's leadership. When black quarterbacks do it, it's ego. When others are quiet on the sidelines, they're focused. But when Shedeur is quiet, he's disengaged. It's not just ridiculous, it's damaging. That's what Cam Newton was fighting against. Not just for Shedeur, but for every young black athlete watching this unfold, wondering if they'll have to deal with the same nonsense when it's their turn. This isn't just about one quarterback. This is about the system that keeps making it harder for players who don't conform to outdated expectations. And it's not just a media problem. It's an organizational one, too. Insiders have pointed out that Shedeur's confidence may be part of the reason he isn't starting yet, that he rubs some people the wrong way, that his image doesn't align with what some executives are comfortable with. That's not a talent issue. That's bias, plain and simple. There are players in the league right now who've done less, prepared less, and performed worse, but they get more benefit of the doubt because they fit the mold. They say the right things. They present the right image. And that tells you everything about how deep the problem goes. Shedeur is entitled. He's earned everything he's gotten. And still, there's this persistent narrative that he's not ready, that he's not the guy, that he needs to prove himself more than everyone else around him. Cam Newton saw that happening in real time, and he did what needed to be done. He stood up, raised his voice, and made it clear that he wasn't going to let another young black quarterback get undermined by speculation dressed up as expert opinion. This whole situation also puts pressure on the NFL itself. Because if the league wants to claim it's evolving, if it wants to support diversity and inclusivity, then it has to address the way media narratives are impacting player development and team decisions. It can't just be about celebrating black players after they win MVPs or Super Bowls. It has to be about supporting them when the system tries to push them out before they even get a chance. Cam Newton forced that conversation to the surface. Shedeur Sanders is still standing, still preparing, still doing the work. But the fact that he even had to be defended like this tells you everything. Talent alone has never been enough for black quarterbacks. They've always had to be exceptional just to be seen as equal. So when Rex Ryan says he doesn't like the body language, that's not analysis. That's erasure. And Cam Newton wasn't about to let that slide. Drop your thoughts in the comments. Is Cam right to call out the media like this? Should analysts be held accountable for shaping narratives without facts? And how do we fix a system that keeps repeating the same patterns? Hit that like button if you're tired of bias hiding behind takes. Subscribe if you want more real conversations about sports, race, and accountability. And share this with someone who still doesn't get why he just doesn't seem locked in isn't a valid reason to question a quarterback's future. Because Shedeur Sanders isn't just proving himself to the league, he's exposing it. And now that the dust has settled, for the moment, one thing is crystal clear. This wasn't just a flash of drama. This was a breaking point. A moment that laid bare the ugly truth about how narratives are shaped and who gets to write them. Rex Ryan might have thought he was just doing what analysts do, offering a critique. But what he did was recycle a narrative that's been weaponized against black quarterbacks for decades. The lazy one, the unmotivated one, the one who doesn't act like a leader, the one who doesn't love the game enough. Those narratives are old, they're lazy, and they're dangerous. Because when a guy like Shedeur Sanders, young, talented, composed, and ambitious, becomes a target of these takes before he's even gotten a fair shot to start, it proves that the system still isn't built to recognize black excellence when it doesn't come prepackaged in the way the old guard is used to. Let's break this down for what it actually is. Shedeur Sanders has been performing under a microscope since the day he committed to Colorado, from being coached by Deion Sanders, to becoming a household name in college football, to stepping into the NFL spotlight with massive expectations on his back. The pressure? Immense. The scrutiny? Constant. But he handled it. No complaints. No drama. Just work. And now, instead of evaluating him based on what he does on the field, we're back to he doesn't look like he cares. That's the standard? Cam Newton has every right to be angry. He's not just defending Shedeur. He's trying to break a cycle that's been passed down like a bad playbook, because he knows exactly how this ends. If you don't shut it down early, it becomes a story. And once the story takes hold, it doesn't matter what the stats say. That's what people don't understand. These narratives aren't harmless. They affect how coaches view players, how owners make decisions, how fans interpret every sideline glance or post-game quote. It creates an impossible situation where the player isn't just playing football anymore. He's constantly managing perception. And for black quarterbacks, the leash is always shorter. That's the truth no one wants to admit. If a white quarterback has a shaky season, he gets time to develop. He's a project. He needs the right system. But when a black quarterback shows growing pains, he's not committed, doesn't read defenses well, low ceiling. Cam Newton saw it in real time. He lived it. And now Shedeur is getting hit with the same tired script. And what's wild is that this all blew up without any on-field meltdown. There wasn't a tantrum. There wasn't an argument with coaches. There wasn't even a sideline incident. Just vibes. Just, he doesn't seem engaged. How do you combat that? How do you defend against feeling-based criticism? That's the trap. The goalposts are invisible, and they move constantly. And when Rex Ryan, someone with a big platform and NFL credibility, says it, it carries weight, whether it's fair or not. So no, Cam Newton didn't overreact. He did what more people should do. He said, "You don't get to do this. Not again. Not to him." And the fact that things almost got physical, that's how deep this runs. That's not a TV moment gone wrong. That's years of built-up frustration. That's being gaslit by a system that demands perfection from black athletes and then still finds a way to discredit them. It's exhausting. It's real. And Cam snapped because it keeps happening. And the worst part? When someone like Cam speaks out, he becomes a story. Not the bias. Not the comment. Not the system. But him. Cam's too emotional. Cam took it too far. Cam made it about race. That's how the cycle protects itself. Call out the problem, and you become the problem. But Cam didn't care. Because this time, the stakes were too high. Shedeur Sanders is on the verge of a breakthrough. And the last thing he or any young black quarterback needs is to be saddled with character critiques that are rooted in bias, not fact. The game is hard enough without carrying the weight of someone else's discomfort with your confidence. And let's be honest, swagger only becomes an issue when it doesn't fit the narrative. Nobody complains when quarterbacks like Joe Burrow walk in with shades and chains. They get praise for their cool under pressure. But Shedeur? Suddenly it's arrogance. It's not just unfair, it's insulting. This is where the media needs to take a hard look at itself. At the language being used. At the assumptions being made. At how quickly they're willing to label a black quarterback a problem without actually analyzing his play. We've seen too many careers derailed by this. Talented, capable players written off before they ever got a real chance. And for what? Because they didn't smile enough? Because they were quiet in a press conference? That's not analysis. That's bias with microphone. And if that makes some people uncomfortable, good. It should. Because change doesn't come from staying comfortable. It comes from calling things out when they're wrong. And that's exactly what Cam Newton did. He didn't care if it made headlines. He didn't care if it made people squirm. He cared about truth, about fairness, about refusing to let another young black athlete become a scapegoat for a system that was never built to support them fully in the first place. But here's the thing. Shedeur Sanders doesn't need anyone to rescue him. He's resilient. He's focused. And he's going to prove himself regardless. But that doesn't mean we should let this kind of narrative slide. Because every time it goes unchecked, it gets a little more powerful. This moment matters. Not just for Shedeur. Not just for Cam. But for every player who's had to carry the burden of being too much or not enough simply because they didn't fit someone else's idea of what a quarterback should look or sound like. So where does the NFL go from here? It starts with accountability. With making sure criticism is rooted in performance, not perception. With giving players room to develop without attaching racial stereotypes to their growth. With allowing swagger and confidence to be celebrated across the board, not only when it feels safe or familiar. Because at the end of the day, talent should speak louder than tone. And if people like Rex Ryan can't get with that program, then maybe it's time their mics get turned down a little. And the silence after moments like these? Deafening. Because once the shouting stops and the headlines cool, what's left is the uncomfortable truth hanging in the air. That a former head coach went on national television and took a shot at a young quarterback's character with zero evidence. And almost no one in the room pushed back. Except Cam Newton. Everyone saw it. The clip went viral. The body language Cam was defending, that cool, calm demeanor Shedeur Sanders carries like armor, it was being twisted into a liability. Rex Ryan didn't analyze Sanders' mechanics or decision-making or preparation. He went for the lowest hanging fruit, the easy narrative. He questioned Sanders' drive, his focus, his hunger, and in doing so, Rex played directly into the same old cycle that's haunted young black quarterbacks for decades. Let's not get it twisted. This isn't about critique. Critique is fair. It's part of the game. But it has to come with facts, with breakdowns, with analysis rooted in what's actually happening on the field. Not gut feelings. Not discomfort with a player's personality. Not projections based on cultural bias. That's what Cam Newton called out. And people can roll their eyes or act like it's overblown. But Cam was protecting more than just a name. He was protecting the future of how black quarterbacks are treated in the NFL. Because the facts are right in front of us. Shedeur Sanders is composed. He's poised. He's consistent. Coaches have praised his preparation. Teammates back his leadership. And yet, he's still being subjected to the same coded criticisms that plagued Cam, Lamar Jameis, and so many others before them. This isn't an isolated incident. It's a pattern. One that's been repackaged, rebranded, and repeated year after year. And it begs the question, why do black quarterbacks have to be twice as good and half as loud just to avoid becoming a problem? It's exhausting. And it's not just exhausting for the players. It's exhausting for fans, analysts, coaches, teammates, anyone who's paying attention. So when Cam Newton stepped in front of that narrative like it was a charging linebacker, he wasn't trying to win a debate. He was trying to stop a blueprint from being reused on the next generation. And if things got heated, so what? If it almost got physical, that's how deeply this runs. You think this is just about Shedeur? It's not. This is about every quarterback who's been asked to prove something beyond their ability to throw, read, or lead. This is about quarterbacks who've been told they need to smile more, to show more humility, to act like they love the game. As if swagger and passion are mutually exclusive. Let's be real. The NFL has always had a problem with perception, especially when it comes to black leadership. It's not just about whether you can throw. It's whether you look the part, whether your intangibles line up with a mold that was designed before you ever took a snap. Cam Newton broke that mold, and they punish him for it. He was called arrogant for smiling. He was called selfish for dancing. He was told he didn't care enough because he didn't react the way they wanted him to. And now that same mold is being forced on Shedeur Sanders. Only this time, it's happening even earlier. That's what pushed him over the edge. And what's wild is Shedeur hasn't even done anything wrong. He's not yelling at coaches. He's not skipping practices. He's not lashing out on the field. He's showing up. He's learning. He's competing. And yet, he's already being boxed in by someone else's narrative. And no one is holding Rex Ryan accountable. He gets to drop an opinion, unsubstantiated, on one of the biggest stages in sports media. And the burden of disproving it falls on the player. The burden of correcting the record falls on the athlete who's already doing everything right. That's why Cam's reaction mattered. It disrupted the cycle. It forced the moment to stop, to be examined, to be challenged. Because if he hadn't pushed back, Rex's comment would have just become part of the broader story. Another concern about Sanders. Another excuse for a team to delay his shot. Another brick in the wall. Cam Newton saw it coming, and he tackled it head on. And this is where things need to change. Because as long as these narratives go unchallenged, they'll keep shaping futures. They'll keep costing players opportunities. They'll keep reinforcing a double standard that has nothing to do with football and everything to do with comfort, control, and outdated perceptions. It's time for sports media to evolve, to stop leaning on lazy tropes, to stop labeling young black athletes based on behavior that wouldn't raise an eyebrow anywhere else. To stop using body language as a catch-all for things they can't or won't explain. And more importantly, to start demanding the same standard of evidence and fairness that they claim to uphold in Shedeur Sanders. Because Shedeur Sanders isn't the problem. The problem is the system that's so quick to put him under a microscope while letting others walk through unchecked. The problem is people like Rex Ryan, who use their credibility to pass off opinion as truth, without realizing, or maybe without caring, how far those words travel. And yes, Cam Newton's voice got loud. Because it had to. Because sometimes the only way to get people to hear you is to stop the show. And that's exactly what he did. He didn't sugarcoat it. He didn't wait for a safer moment. He spoke when it mattered most. And in doing so, he reminded us all that silence is complicity. That if you don't check the lie in real time, it becomes a truth by default. This wasn't about defending Shedeur Sanders' reputation. It was about defending his right to be evaluated fairly. To not be defined by stereotypes. To not be crushed under expectations he didn't create. To not have to carry the weight of someone else's discomfort with his confidence. As Shedeur is going to get a shot, that much is clear. And when he does, the results will speak for themselves. The talent is there. The mindset is there. The composure is there. The only question is whether the system will be honest enough to see it. Cam Newton? He's already seen it. And he wasn't about to let anyone, especially someone with as much influence as Rex Ryan, rewrite that story before it even began. So drop your tape below. Do you think Cam was justified in going off? Was Rex's commentary out of line? Should media figures be held responsible for the narratives they push, even when they sound harmless? Hit that like button if you're done with the double standards. Subscribe for more breakdowns that aren't afraid to call out the bias. And share this with someone who still doesn't get why he just doesn't seem locked in isn't a valid reason to question a quarterback's future. Because when talent meets resilience, no narrative can hold it back. And Shedeur Sanders? He's not here to play the game. He's here to change it.